Good morning. Thank you. My name's Alan Chan from Bridgesheet Capital Partners, and I'm here also with Abraham Aguilan from Affluens360. Today we're here to talk about and learn more about CardioResus. The guys are a medical device company and hear about the opportunity. So Simon Shields is the chairman and Simon Witherspoon is the GM of operations. Over to you guys to sort of give us a bit of a lead into the background of the company, what you guys do, and your own journey. That'd be a good start.
Thanks, Alan. Okay, well, CardioResus is an automated external defibrillator company, AED, and we're developing a personal defibrillator really for use by the bystander market, where it's very small for that reason. It's light, it's easy to use, and it will be the most affordable defibrillator that's out there. We're confident about these things because we actually bought out of liquidation a company that had already had a personal use defibrillator approved, and it was already the smallest, lightest, most affordable defibrillator. And we are going to be making improvements to the redesign. You can see how small it is. This is the former device in its actual case. And this is a trainer device out of the case. Now, we're going to be making significant improvements based on the experience of that company in terms of ease of use and the life of the device as well. And that's going to be occurring over the next year or so, and then we'll be launching the device.
Amazing. Simon, tell me why the product? What was it that got you excited about building this?
Well, look, it's obviously a life-saving device. Cardiac arrests are one of the top causes of death in society, and it's an area that, while progress is being made, it's relatively slow compared to other areas. And a friend of mine, an old friend of mine, his wife had a cardiac arrest, and he didn't have a defibrillator at home, and that's what led him to create the predecessor company, which unfortunately is so often in the case when you have founders that are in control of companies. They're great inventors, they're not great managers, and that company went into liquidation. So we've bought the product out of liquidation. We've got many of the team that actually did the engineering work on the device that have come in to help us with it. We've raised money already, so we're quite a long way down the track in terms of redesign, and it's just a very, very exciting device.
Amazing.
No, fantastic. So I guess with your history with the previous device, I guess this time round, what have you learned from that, and how are you going to apply that to sort of CardioResus this time round? Maybe you can talk about also the go-to-market strategy and what you are going to build on, because clearly the old product was quite successful globally, so maybe you can sort of talk about that.
Yeah, well, it's probably a good way to start talking about the market experience that the previous company and the previous device created, and then that can lead into what we learnt and what we're going to do differently. So the previous device, they actually sold about 25,000 units in 2.5 years globally. It was sold in Australia, New Zealand, UK, Europe, South Africa, Philippines. So they had a global sales reach, and that really demonstrated that the market accepted the need for a personal defibrillator as opposed to the public access defibrillators that were in the market at the time. A lot of I think it was around about 65% of the sales in Australia were through direct to customer. So that was mums and dads at home buying one over the internet directly through the website at the previous company, and that really validated that home market. So the idea of having a defibrillator at home was enabled by a device like CellAED, being, as Simon mentioned earlier, much more affordable than the existing devices, much easier to use, also smaller and lighter. And the previous devices were $2,500 to $5,000 each. When the CellAED came to market, it was retailing at $360, so it made a big impact. So it really made an impact in the consumer market, and through first aid responders and first aid training organisations, people who had a knowledge about cardiac arrest and the need for defibrillators, they would engage immediately with the device when they saw it. And the RRR strategy of engaging those organisations as distributors was quite effective, and we continue to do that. We saw in Australia the most successful distributor was a first aid training organisation called LiveCore. They sold over $1 million of product in 2 years, which was quite a good result. And in France, there was a particularly strong distributor by the name of Def, and they sold 700 devices in their first 2 months of being in operation, which was pretty impressive. And they'd actually placed an order for an additional 5,000 devices just before the business went into administration. Def, we have at CardioResus, we've been in touch with them, we've had a number of meetings. They're very supportive of what we're doing. They want to remain a partner, they want to be a distributor when we get back to the market, and they are in fact an investor in CardioResus as well. They're a top 10 shareholder. The opportunity with them in France is very large. They distribute through a Good Sam type organisation called Solve Life, where they want to equip each of those responders with a CellAED. There's 750,000 responders in that group, so it's a very strong sales channel for them. So what we also saw was with the corporate market, that was starting to grow as well. In particular in Australia, mining companies who've got a lens on safety, so companies like Rio Tinto and Evolution Mining were starting to buy devices. So we know that there is a strong market acceptance for the device, and that's what we want to, very confident we can pick that up again when we have a device ready to go to the market.
Oh, brilliant. Now, obviously, Simon, you did a bit of a demonstration on the size. Maybe we can talk about the redesign phase and maybe, I guess, the competitive advantage. Maybe I don't have a phone with me, but obviously the size there is quite...
Oh, you can compare that to...
Yeah, obviously.
That's the device out of its...
Yeah, so size-wise,
yeah,
it's incredible, right? So it's quite portable.
Yeah.
And I have seen those defibrillators that are on the wall,
Yes.
right? And you can just imagine that's not usually when something like this does happen and when you need it the most, it's not something that you can easily get to, right?
No.
Yeah, they're generally too far away, and that was the whole concept of personal defibrillation, to have them portable so that you can carry it, or it could be at home. So over 70% of out-of-hospital cardiac arrests occur in the home, and up until the previous devices, they were out of reach, $2,500 to $5,000, they were out of reach from most people to buy. So this was solving that problem. I think what we learned in the market, and the French distributor was particularly valuable in providing the feedback about real-world use.
Yes.
Simon demonstrated the snap peel stick mode of operation. In theory, it looks very simple and very easy to use, but in practicality, it brought some issues in that those electrode pads were rigid, and there was concerns that it wasn't providing a strong adhesion to the body, which would limit the amount of current and the effectiveness of the shock. So our redesign addresses that with flexible pads.
Yeah.
Also, there's an infant button, which is not a requirement by the regulator, so we're removing that because that was causing some problems. And the packaging as well is actually quite complicated to remove the device from the packet, and you can't actually start the device until it's completely removed from the packaging. And when you snap it in half, it starts giving voice commands and instructions. Well, those don't start until you've actually got it out of the packaging. So there was feedback that there was long periods of time where people, under pressure, didn't know what to do. So our device is going to address that with a start button from the immediacy.
Yeah. To summarise, we're improving the ease of use. We're improving the effectiveness of the pads. We're improving the life of the pads and of the battery. But there are some very other important features that set this device apart as well, apart from how small it is. And that is that it's a device that we can monitor through the 4G telephone network. It means that we can tell that the device is live as well and the battery is working and so forth. It also means we know where the device is.
Yes.
So there's important data also that it can obviously have stored after the event's over, that's also available then for analysis. So it really was very much a breakthrough device, and in the second version we're improving on that.
Fantastic, that's so good to hear. I know Simon, you mentioned before around, and sadly, the former operator going into administration. Love to hear obviously what's changed, what your path and your plans are forward this time around.
Yes.
And also, what's exciting you about this next phase of the product.
Yeah. Well, look, we're taking a very collaborative approach going forward, and of course we've got access to all the information and data that the previous company had. And so, putting those things together, bringing in people that have got expertise in the medical device area. One of our board of directors is ex-ResMed and has a background in quality assurance, for example. Another board member had been the chief financial officer of this company going back several years, not at the time of liquidation. He's come on, so that's very important oversight. We've got a CEO who has got medical device experience as well, a lot of TGA experience, so that's very important as well. We've incorporated some of the other contractors and employees into the company. Very strong project management backgrounds. That was something also that we felt was lacking previously. And we're outsourcing as much of the work this time rather than bringing everything in-house as well, because that's giving us a lot more control over the spending and the scope of the actual projects that we're doing. And put all that together, the collaboration that we're having with the regulators is important as well. One of the issues, again, founder-led company, they've got a very strong vision, but a little bit of a outside the box. We're working as closely as we can with the distributors, with the regulators, to make sure that we've got a device that has an easy pathway and acceptance.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Simon, for sharing it. It's really exciting to see your passion for the product and the business as well.
So I guess, guys, maybe let's talk about timelines, milestones, and how an incoming investor would see, I guess, your exit strategy or what the plans are. Yeah, maybe let's talk about that plan.
Well, I guess looking at the milestones, so since we incorporated CardioResus, we've ticked off the first couple of milestones, which importantly been able to acquire the IP and the patents. And that wasn't as easy as it sounds. And just of last week, we've completed the redesign work. So our engineering team spent 3 months examining all the feedback that we got from the market on usability and features of the device and put in a redesign to improve all those features. We signed off on that as a board last week, so that second milestone of design has been completed. The next milestone is building working prototypes and having those verified and validated. So that's underway. We are going to have to increase our headcount with a couple more software engineers to help with that process. And that's part of the use of funds for this raise. Timeline on that milestone is we're targeting the end of September to have a working prototype proven. That'll allow us then to do a clinical trial build of a batch of probably up to 100 devices to prepare ourselves for a clinical trial. So at the same time as the prototype build is going on, we'll start the planning for the clinical trial and the regulatory pathway. So that's for the end of September. Then the build for the clinical trials is probably going to be another 3 months towards the end of this calendar year. We'll have a batch of devices ready for the clinical trial, and our planning phase for that should be nearing completion as well. So they're the 2 milestones.
In terms of an exit strategy, we're very clear that from a business point of view, obviously the business objective is to get this device out into the market, save lives, and have a business that makes money. But from the investor's point of view, it's very, very clear that we want to take investors that are not stuck with us. This is a unlisted investment, so it's at the top of the board's mind that the investors will have optionality to be able to exit the investment for a very good uplift, at relatively early opportunity, or they can stay with the investment. So there are a number of pathways to that. Our mind is open as to how that might take place. It could be that we raise capital with a large institution that might want to acquire some or all of the shares of existing investors, so that would be a way. It may be that we list the company, and that would be a way. And both those opportunities were explored in the predecessor company. Unfortunately, again, issues around the founder, we weren't able to actually do those things at that time.
I guess maybe last question for you, Simon. So let's talk about the investment opportunity. I guess the deal terms, the use of funds, and I guess where that places you guys in timelines versus CardioResus. I think we talk about the forecast of how many units and a break-even type of scenario. So maybe you can sort of share that with us, please.
Yeah, and so The terms of the deal, so CardioResus is a public unlisted company. We've got around about 98 shareholders at the moment, just over 3 million shares on issue. 45% of those shares are held by directors. We'd like to see that number come down below 20%. It's our goal. We're very aware that we don't want undue amounts of control from a shareholder basis, as problems that were eventuated with in the previous business. So the current offer is 2.4 million shares at $2.50 to raise $6 million. That $6 million will get us through to break-even point. The pre-money valuation at $2.50 a share is $7.5 million. So that's that is a pretty attractive entry point for the type of company that we are at the stage we are at. I mean, Alan, we were talking earlier about Dual Medical, which is a Danish business they raised capital last year at a valuation of $60 million, and they are a couple of steps behind us. Their device is really only pre-prototype. They've got a mock-up, but they haven't started the regulatory or the clinical or anything like that. So that gives you an idea of the value proposition that we're offering. In terms of the use of funds, that'll get us through. So the patent renewal fees come up pretty regularly, and they're pretty expensive. They're necessary to have, but they're pretty expensive. Clinical trial preparation, regulatory preparation, headcount. So we've currently got 7 paid employees. We're forecasting by the end of this year for that number to be 12 to 13. So our headcount's going up. That's, as I mentioned earlier, some software engineers, and then some clinical trial regulatory specialists and quality management specialists to help build out the business around that. In terms of break-even points, I mentioned the $6 million will get us through to that, in addition to what we've already got in the bank, plus some of the R&D tax incentives, which we'll qualify for over each year. And that, on our modelling, in terms of devices sold, that break-even point comes around about 15,000 devices per annum. And that number is, you put that into context, the previous business sold 25,000 in their first 2.5 years. So the 15,000 with the opportunities that we're very confident we can pick up with again in France through that distributor, and also the Australian distributors and client base. We're pretty confident that we can pick those numbers up.
And look, also the company has status as an early stage investment company as well, ESIC, and that comes with benefits to the investor. So the first benefit is that 20% of any money that they invest can be taken straight off the top of their tax bill. Whatever the tax bill is, it gets reduced by 20% for that. And the other benefit is that you have tax-free capital gains for the first 10 years as an investor as well. So in the light of the recent changes to the capital gains tax, that's quite an incentive for investors.
Oh, that's fantastic. Look, I think that's probably all questions from myself. Maybe final remarks for you guys on the investment thesis.
Well, for me, I think what we've got here is a unique opportunity to invest in a business at a very attractive entry price. And the way to look at it is we're not starting from scratch. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, it sounds very complicated with clinical trials and regulatory approvals," but a lot of that work's done. You can imagine we're starting a 100-metre race at the 80-metre mark. We can leverage off all that work that's been done by the previous business. There was over $60 million of capital invested in the business to develop all these systems to get all these approvals done. We've been able to pick that up for a very cheap price, and there's a very attractive opportunity there. And we've laid out our milestones. Each time we achieve a milestone, we de-risk the business somewhat, which then should translate into a valuation uplift. And Simon's outlined also exit strategies, which are not that far away. So the opportunity to be able to either realise some gains or stay in as the business works to realise its vision.
Yeah, that's right. And look, the other issue that investors typically have when they're trying to invest in a company that hasn't launched its product yet is how confident can they be in the sale? And we know that the sales are there. We saw the previous product. This product will be better than the previous product. So there's been a lot of de-risking that's happened even before the investors have put their money in already. And as Simon said, you compare that to the valuation of other unlisted companies around at the moment, and it's a pretty extraordinary situation.
Absolutely. I think One final question for me, gentlemen. Obviously, Affluens360, we work a lot with medical professionals. Over 300 families, about 85% of our clients are actually doctors or practice owners themselves. And we've helped them from setup all the way to succession. I guess there's a really important piece to having a team behind any business. And love for you to guys just to share, your experience so far in terms of the team that's been able to support you as well through your journey.
Yeah, well, there's certainly some important professional services people. On the tax side, have somebody who's been the CFO of a listed company, but he brings with him all the support as well in terms of systems that are needed to run the business, and the tax advice, which is so important, things like being able to get that ESIC status, for example, or the R&D tax refunds. So just know that these things exist and we can take advantage of them. Likewise, applying for grants. We haven't touched on that, but we expect that we should have some success along the way on grants as well. Intellectual property is such an important part of this business as well, so we have lawyers around that who are very experienced and have dealt with the patents of this company previously, and so there's that continuity there that we've got. And then from an engineering point of view, it's a product that requires both software and hardware. It requires telecommunications because of the monitoring and the data going back and forth. So we have these experienced engineering people that we either contract or outsource to make sure that it all works together, and we have a board of 6 people, and every person on that board at the moment also is acting in some way in the company. It's pretty hands-on. It's quite a frugal business, and the main aim is to really get this product up as quickly as possible, be good custodians of our shareholders' money, and deliver an exit opportunity that is very attractive to the investors at the earliest opportunity.
Thank you both so much, and I think most importantly, that's saving lives. I'm sure this has been something in everyone's family that we've experienced at one point or another. So I'm really glad that there is a product like this out there that can just help people at home.
Thanks, Abraham.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks, guys.
Cheers.
Thank you.